Larry Bird was one of the biggest trash talkers in basketball. And a lot of people say, really? They thought it was Reggie or Charles.
Bird used to tell me, look here, man, you're supposed to be a great defender, right? And I'm going to make sure I tell you where I'm going to shoot the ball at.
And he said, I'm going to get it right here. I'm going to shoot it right in your face.
And I'm looking at this guy like, he's nuts.
The basket is good.
We lost the game. I got accused of being a racist, and I'm bad guy now.
Larry Bird was a bad man on the basketball court. 3 MVPs, 3 championships. A legend. But some of the greatest black players who ever lived hated him. This hate was not about his talent. It was about something much bigger and way more revealing about basketball in America in the 1980s. Magic Johnson said you could neutralize him. Isiah Thomas said if he were black, he'd just be another good player. Dennis Rodman said he was not God. And Kendrick Perkins says Bird would not be great in today's game. If you are feeling this breakdown, hit the hype feature and give this video some hype while we get into why the legends really took it personal. The year was 1979. The NBA was dying, TV networks delayed games, white America thought the game had become too black, too urban. Then Larry Bird showed up, a white superstar, and suddenly the NBA had a solution. He was the antidote to the league's identity crisis. He was the great white hope. But here is what made black players furious. It was how people talked about him. When Julius Erving dominated, when Magic Johnson put on a show, the media said they had God-given athleticism, natural talent, instinct. These words suggest black excellence is biological. It does not require hard work or intelligence. Larry Bird? His dominance was framed completely differently. He was smart, he had basketball intelligence. He worked harder than everyone else. The message was clear. White dominance was a triumph of the mind. Black dominance was just the body. To Magic Johnson and Isiah Thomas, who had basketball IQs matching or exceeding Bird's, this narrative was insulting. They were being told the white man won because he was smarter and worked harder. The league constantly said that Magic and Bird saved the NBA, but black pioneers like Dr. Julius Erving carried the league through its darkest days. When Bird arrived, the story changed. Bird became the primary savior. For Adrian Dantley and Dennis Rodman, this felt like erasure. The institution had only decided to value basketball when a white face was leading it. Now let's talk about Magic Johnson. Magic's hate was different. It was strategic and competitive. Magic did not deny that Bird was great. Magic rejected the aura of invincibility. Magic believed the world had been duped. They thought Bird was unstoppable. Magic knew Bird was a problem with a specific solution: neutralization. Magic recognized that Bird's greatest strengths were his half-court creativity and post footwork. In a slow game, Bird could manipulate defenders with his eyes and angles. Magic's antidote was speed. Turn the game into a track meet. Get Larry moving side to side. Force him to run the floor. When you did that, Bird's lack of lateral quickness became obvious. Magic knew this. He built a game plan around it. When the Lakers executed, they proved something. A player who could be neutralized by running fast could not be the greatest player of all time. But there was more to Magic's hate. The Celtics' structure protected Bird. Bird played alongside Kevin McHale and Robert Parrish and Dennis Johnson. Magic had to be the primary ball handler, creator, and defender. Bird got to roam defensively and gamble for steals. The media praised his steal numbers as genius defense. Magic knew the truth. Bird was hidden on defense. The system was designed to hide his inability to stay in front of his man. Then came 1987. Magic had arguably his single greatest individual season, yet the narrative still favored Bird. Magic felt robbed. He felt basketball writers favored the white working-class hero over the flashy black superstar. Magic was trapped in a different cage. He had to be the good guy, the smiling face. Meanwhile, Bird got to be surly and arrogant and combative. People loved him for it. Magic had to comply to be accepted. Bird was accepted for being his authentic, abrasive self. This was perhaps Magic's deepest resentment. Now we get to Isiah Thomas and the Detroit Pistons. And this is where the hate became something else. This is where it became a nuclear explosion about race and America and basketball all at once. The Pistons were the bad boys. Physically aggressive, predominantly black, vilified by the media. The Celtics were the good guys, clean, tough but respectable. After Game 7 of the 1987 Eastern Conference Finals, after Bird's late-game heroics had crushed Detroit's dreams, the Pistons' locker room erupted. Dennis Rodman, then a rookie, told reporters something explosive. He said Bird was not God. He said Bird was not even the best player in the league. And then he said it. He said Bird was white, and that was the reason he got the MVP award. Isiah Thomas, the Pistons leader, doubled down. He said Bird was a very good basketball player. Exceptional. But he agreed with Rodman, and he said the thing that would follow him forever. If Bird were black, he would just be another good guy. People misunderstood this statement. They thought Thomas was saying Bird was bad. He was not. Thomas was making a sociological argument. He was arguing that the leap from very good to legend, from all-star to GOAT, was powered by Bird's whiteness. Thomas believed that if a black player had Bird's exact skill set, slow and unathletic and ground-bound, that player would be criticized for his physical deficiencies. He would not be deified for his intelligence. He would not be celebrated for overcoming his limitations. A black player with those limitations would be told he was not athletic enough. He would be told he did not have the physical tools. He would be told he could not compete at the highest level. But Bird got bonus points for succeeding despite his lack of athleticism. Black players were penalized for their athleticism. It was called natural, therefore unearned. Bird was awarded for his discipline and mind. Thomas was saying that if you stripped Bird's whiteness away and gave his exact skill set to a black player, that player would be viewed as a peer to Adrian Dantley or Alex English. Elite scorers, but not gods, not legends, just very good guys. The Pistons' locker room was a cauldron of racial resentment. Bird was allowed to be a trash talker and a physical player without being called a thug. When Bird threw an elbow, it was gritty. When the Pistons did it, it was dirty. When Bird was aggressive, it was toughness. When the bad boys were aggressive, it was violence. This double standard in how the game was morally adjudicated was the root of their animosity. They did not just hate Bird, they hated the moral superiority he represented. Thomas also attacked the structure that protected Bird. Bird was drafted into a dynasty. The Celtics had a front office that had secured Kevin McHale and Robert Parrish in what Thomas viewed as an almost illicit trade. Bird did not have to bring the ball up against pressure. He did not have to bang with the biggest centers. His structure carried him. Thomas felt Bird was the hood ornament on a luxury car, getting credit for the engine's performance. All the success, none of the struggle. Dennis Rodman took the hate even further. His entire value was predicated on athleticism and physical dominance. To Rodman, Bird represented everything he stood against. Rodman genuinely believed Bird was physically mediocre. He claimed Bird benefited from a league still transitioning from slow basketball to athletic basketball. If you stripped Bird of the Celtics system and referee protection, Bird would be exposed. Rodman was aware of the Great White Hope dynamic. He saw how the cameras gravitated to Bird. He saw how fans treated him like a demigod. He attacked the media shielding that protected Bird from criticism. When Bird had a bad game, it was ignored or explained away. Black players never got this grace. Rodman felt Bird would not look the same without the white media complex propping him up. A huge part of Rodman's rage was officiating. The Pistons believed the league wanted Bird to win. Bird got calls nobody else got. This created a sense the Pistons were playing 5-on-8. Rodman's hate was the rage of the underdog who feels the game is rigged. Adrian Dantley brings a different perspective. While the league trembled at Bird's name, Dantley looked at him and saw a defender he could exploit. Dantley's hate was rooted in refusing to buy into the intimidation factor. He believed Bird could be handled physically. His strategy was to attack Bird's feet, drive right at him and force him to move. You could render Bird inefficient on defense. Dantley downplayed Bird's aura. To him, Bird was food on defense. This demythologized Bird. His animosity came from knowing the world treated Bird as a defensive stalwart, while Dantley knew Bird could be scored on if you simply attacked him. Dantley also resented Bird's trash talk. For a stoic professional like Dantley, this was disrespect. But Dantley recognized Bird played with toughness and swagger rare for white players. Yet Dantley's hate was fueled by disparity and recognition. Dantley was one of the most efficient scorers in NBA history. He shot over 55% from the field. Yet he was viewed as selfish. Bird was viewed as a team player. Dantley resented that his efficient game was criticized while Bird's volume shooting was celebrated. Now let's jump to the modern era. Kendrick Perkins has become the primary voice of modern skepticism toward Bird's legacy. Perkins was an NBA center and is now an analyst. He argues Bird lacked the athleticism for the modern game. He looks at LeBron James, Kevin Durant, Kobe Bryant, players with elite physical tools, and he asks, how does Bird fit here? Perkins has notably left Bird out of his all-time top 10 lists. His reasoning is rooted in athleticism. Perkins aligns with a controversial school of thought that if Bird played today, he might be playing in Europe rather than dominating the NBA. This reflects a real belief among some. Bird's lack of speed would make him a target in pick and roll. How does Bird survive isolation against Steph Curry or James Harden? This is modern revisionism. It is about refusing to let nostalgia protect Bird from scrutiny. Perkins wants to judge Bird by today's standards. Perkins also directs his animosity at the media's tendency to use Bird as the standard for every white player. He views this as lazy and racialized. By constantly invoking Bird, the media keeps the great white hope narrative alive. Perkins hates the Shadow Bird cast. But all of this hate from all of these players was really directed at something far bigger than Bird himself. It was directed at a system. It was directed at a structure. It was directed at a story. Black players felt that Bird played by different rules. The league protected its golden goose. Fouls on Bird were soft. Criticism of Bird was muted. This created a sense of injustice. To beat Bird, you had to beat the referees too. You had to beat the media. You had to beat the institution. The narrative that Bird saved the league was a constant irritant. It implied that the NBA was not worth saving until a white superstar arrived. Black pioneers like Dr. J had carried the league, but they were erased from the savior narrative. Black players were furious that their contributions were being written out of history. The hate for Bird was a rejection of this erasure. It was a demand that the NBA was built on black labor and black talent, not just the arrival of a white savior from Indiana. So what was this hate really about? It was not a monolith. It was a full spectrum of different grievances and resentments. For Magic Johnson, it was strategic. A need to demystify a rival to beat him. A need to prove that the myth of invincibility was just that, a myth. For Isiah Thomas, it was sociological, a rejection of the racial double standards of sports media, a demand that the grading curve be applied equally. For Dennis Rodman, it was visceral, a hatred of the great white hope narrative, a refusal to accept that a white player could be minimized as mediocre while being celebrated as a god. For Adrian Dantley, it was professional, a refusal to be intimidated, a refusal to view Bird as physically superior. For Kendrick Perkins, it is revisionist, a modern skepticism of a legacy built in a protected era, a demand that history be rewritten by new standards. But ultimately, they all hated the same thing. They hated Larry Bird as the White Shadow. He was the figure who loomed over their achievements. He was the yardstick by which they were measured. He was the beneficiary of a system they felt was designed to elevate him. He was the story told about basketball and about America. Here is what is important to understand. Larry Bird was a great player, a really great player, a tough competitor, a force of nature on the basketball court. Nobody who faced him denied that. But the legend around him got inflated. It got protected. It got used as a tool to erase black contributions and black excellence. These legends did not hate Bird the player. They hated Bird the White Shadow, the myth, the institution, the narrative. They hated that his whiteness became a feature, not a bug. They hated that his lack of athleticism became evidence of his intelligence, when the same lack of athleticism in a black player would be evidence of inadequacy. They hated that he was allowed to be authentic and celebrated, while they were forced to code switch and minimize themselves to be accepted. So when you hear Magic say Bird was controllable, he was saying the myth was a lie. When you hear Isiah say Bird would just be another good guy if he were black, he was saying the grading curve was rigged. When you hear Rodman say Bird was not God, he was saying the great white hope narrative was a sickness. When you hear Dantley say Bird could be had, he was saying the intimidation factor was manufactured. When you hear Perkins say Bird would not thrive in today's game, he is saying that era, that story, that protection cannot extend into a new age. The hate for Larry Bird was a hate of American racism dressed up as basketball analysis. It was a hate of a media apparatus that could not imagine excellence without intelligence, when that excellence came from a white body, but could not imagine anything but athleticism when that excellence came from a black body. It was a hate of a system that elevated one player while diminishing others who played the same game with the same fire. Larry Bird was real. The hate for him was real. And the reasons for the hate reveal something true about basketball, about media, and about America. If you found this breakdown valuable, leave a comment below, hit like, and subscribe for more deep dives into basketball history and the cultural forces that shape the game.